Hi, week 5 of our class was that midterm exam, so now those essays are submitted and you're ready to move back, not into summative thinking about our course, but the actual units of the class. So in Unit 4, you take up chapters 25 through 27. This is the United States and World War II, Cold War politics in the years of Truman, Cold War politics, even though the title belies it, also during Eisenhower, and then the politics of the culture of abundance, the 1950s, the sort of nifty 50s. As always, you see our SPRITE, our social, political, religious, intellectual, and cultural, technical, and economic student learning outcomes, driving how we think about the course and the material. And without further ado, let's take a quick look at Unit 4. Successful completion of Unit 4 begins by, of course, reading the assigned text and checking out those self-assessment questions. Again, very few of you typically send me any responses to these, which is fine. They're not required. But again, as you both preview and review with these questions, if you need me to clarify your thinking or your understanding, feel free to reach out to me. As before, your Unit 4 understanding can be enhanced by viewing the World War II and the 50s videos from the Annenberg series, as well as any of the John Green Crash Course, World War II Part 1, World War II Part 2, the Cold War, this is largely focused in Europe, the Cold War in Asia, looking at Korea and hints at the foundations that will become the Vietnam War, and civil rights in the 1950s. And again, I like that this crash course delineates that question of race, one that we've been looking at since Reconstruction. We went on and considered it again with the progressives. We looked at it in the New Deal, and now again this idea of identity and experience and how your identity dictates perhaps your American experience in the civil rights and 1950s video. For the online lectures from Lecture Point, at this point you would be tackling Lecture 9, World War II Battlefront, Lecture 10, World War II Homefront, Lecture 11, the Early Cold War, and finally Lecture 12, the Affluent Society and Civil Rights, 1945 to 1961. Unit 4, Common Misconceptions and Difficult Topics. Of course, there are many in any of these eras, but I just identify a few here. This question of Americans in the Holocaust and what, if any, is the culpability of the United States during the course of the Holocaust, how the Red Scare happened and why people didn't stand up to McCarthy, just how prosperous and contented were the 1950s. In an age of excess, in an age of abundance, who was still reeling with the lack of abundance? We see that not only on a racial line, but also regional lines. For example, in poor rural parts of the Appalachian Mountains here in North Carolina. To what extent are people experiencing abundance in the 50s and the perfect American family as seen on television, and how were other Americans living? All right. As before, once you've reviewed those materials that are both a reinforcement and an extension of your reading, you'll take the Unit 4 quiz. You'll participate in a discussion board. This time the discussion board, is on the so-called Forgotten War, the Korean conflict. Years ago, as a seated instructor, I used to coordinate both World War II veteran and Korean War veteran panels, and the Korean War veteran experiences were often very jarring for students, as many of them communicated a sense that their sacrifices had not been duly remembered and recorded by Americans. So this is a topic that when I moved this course to an online format, I wanted to make sure that I highlighted and really sort of reverence for the service of those men that I had the pleasure of knowing and working. In 1995, a Korean War memorial was opened and dedicated in Washington, D.C. And so this is the question that I bring to you for Unit 4 participation. How did the Korean War shape American foreign policy? even though it's been dubbed the Forgotten War. Is that claim really true? You know, most Americans associate the Korean War with the TV series MASH. But is it more than that? Well, of course it is. But then if it is more than that, is it being remembered and considered in a modern context by Americans? Remembering always that your posts are to be analytical and specific, reply critically to at least 2 of your classmates. And for the writing assignment for Unit 4, again, you go back to your standby, your companion in this learning experience, SAS Curriculum Pathways. And I'm going down to the Unit 4 written assignment. Again, you can be guided by the 4C's writing rubric. This time you take up the question of Japanese internment camps. The question you answer is, should the government place Japanese Americans living on the West Coast in internment camps? Remembering that you have those closed caption videos, those interactive annotated primary source documents. You're going back to the time period and considering the controversy that surrounds the treatment of Japanese Americans during World War II. In your two-page paper, you'll make sure that you are using specific and relevant excerpts from the documents and then explaining what excerpt you use in your own words and applying it to your argument so that you have a document-based answer with appropriate historical evidence. Again, not just opinion or editorializing on this question of Japanese internment. Or I should say Japanese American internment, because they were American citizens. At this point, we are winding down in the semester. After Unit 4, just as a kind of preview, you will have one more unit to come, and that will be your final regular unit, which will be Unit 5. Here's Unit 4, Unit 5 to come. And at this point, you can go ahead and, if I were you, begin to examine what will be required of you in the final exam, because that will come before you know it in these fast 8-week classes. The final exam, unlike the midterm exam, is largely going to be objective. There's one optional short essay. And just highlighting for you, at any time, you should check out the dates of when that final exam will be open and when it will close based on the semester. And don't wait till the last minute, right? That old adage about being prepared and the early bird getting the worm. All right, off to Unit 4. Best wishes to you.